Now that we've got all the frames completed, we're just about to start hanging them into the boat. And I call it hanging them because we're actually going to hang them from the chine log right here, fasten them to the chine log first, and then we can plumb them up later. And I'll show you how we go about that. But we've got a number of them in there on the starboard side right now, and we're just kind of scrutinizing the spacing. Originally, I had said that I was going to have 14 frames on that side in 13 spaces, but I hung a few frames that close together, and I didn't like the look of it. It looked like a sea of frames over there. It was just a little bit too much. So I decided I would change my mind, and I think it's a great thing on a skiff that you can change your mind anytime you want on the shape of the skiff or the construction or just about anything else. So what I've decided to do is space them out a little bit wider, and I've deducted 2 frames, so what I'm going to have over there is 12 frames and 11 spaces, and I think it's going to look great. It's very similar to the one that's in my yard, so I went up and looked at that one as a reference, and this is basically what I've come up with right here. So we're going to get started hanging them, and I'm going to show you how it's done. I spaced them on that side and measured it all out, so I'm ready to hang them on that side actually, but I'm going to come over here on this side and show you how I went about it. I'm going to use a metric tape and divide this run up before we start hanging the framing. Now I'm back aft here, and I'm going to decide where I'd like to place the first frame. And really it's just a decision from a little bit of experience, you might say, and I've decided to put the first frame 6 inches on center ahead of the transom, like so. And I was originally going to put it up a little bit closer, but I didn't like the looks of that, and I think this looks just about right. So that's what I've done. I've made a mark 6 inches ahead of the transom right down here at the chine, and I'm just going to pencil that mark in a little bit better there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a square, and I'm just going to put it on that mark and square that mark right out to the outside right here. Now, you can see that I've placed a metric tape right on that mark, like so, and clamped it down right there. Now, there's no tremendous degree of accuracy here, but I've got that mark on the inside of the end of the clip on the tape, so that's fine just like that. And what we're doing is just stretch it down, and now we're going to do the same exact thing up forward that we did back aft. We're going to place a mark 6 inches aft of the stem here at the heel, and then we're going to square that mark out to the outboard side of the planking, like so. And those marks that I just made, the one forward and aft, represent the center lines of the very forward and the very after framing. Now that mark is so close to 4,540 millimeters that is the measurement that we're going to use to divide up. We're taking the 4,540 millimeters and entering that into our computer. Then we're going to divide by 11 the number of spaces between that first frame and the last frame, and it comes out to be 412.72 millimeters. All right, I've started back aft here, and I've placed the tape measure on that first mark that's 6 inches ahead of the transom, and our second frame is going to be placed at 412.72 millimeters, which is basically 413 millimeters, and that is where the center line of our second frame is going to be right there. 8, 2, 5, 44, right there. Now before I started, I went ahead and multiplied all these numbers right out so I'd have them written down in front of me, and I won't have to keep going back to the calculator or anything. I've got them all written down. All I really have to do is find that position on the tape measure. 1, 2, 3, 8, 4, 6, right there. That's where we want it. And I'm going right down the side, marking all the spacing. Then I'm going to come back and take a square and square those measurements over to the inside, to the inboard edge of the chine, where the chine, where the placement of the frame will be exactly on the chine. Now those are centerline marks for the framing, not like a framer would frame a house and put a mark at the edge of the framing. These are just centerline marks. I'm going to place the frame on that center line. Now we're going to take our first frame and put it up into position there, and we're going to take kind of a deep clamp here and clamp it kind of diagonally so the clamp doesn't block where we're trying to drill. And you also notice that I have a block of wood connected to the threaded end of the clamp, and that's just to stop the clamp from making dents in the planking on the outside, because I'd like to tighten it up a little bit before I get started here drilling so it doesn't move around. Now, like I said, the clamp is not in the way, and we're going to drill one hole through the bottom end of that frame into the chine log. We're using the same exact screws that we've used before on the boat here. We're going to put a little bit of beeswax on it, and I'm going to put it in the hole and drive it into position with a bit brace, because the bit brace allows me to be able to feel when the head of that screw gets to the bottom of that hole. I don't want to over tighten the screw, because if you over tighten it way too much, you could split that frame. Then I'd have to take the frame out and put another one. I don't want to do that. So I'm very careful here, and I'm not going to drive them with electric. I'm just going to drive them by hand with a bit brace. Now we're going to hang two more frames here, just like we hung the first one, exactly the same procedure. We're just going to bring it up to that line, get it centered as close as we can on the line, maybe 1/4 of an inch away from the bottom of the chine log. Apply our clamp, tighten it down, maybe not have it too tight so we can bang it around a little bit and adjust it a little tiny bit. And like I said before, we're going to make sure that clamp is out of the way so that we can get our screw fastened in there. Now we're only going to put one screw in it into the chine log right now. We're going to put our second screw in there later. And the reason why that is I want the frame just fastened to the chine log with one screw so that the head of the frame will still be mobile, and I can move the head of the frame around a little bit and get them plumbed up before I fasten them to the planking. Now we're going to hang a plumb bob alongside that frame, just forward of it, and it lays right alongside the frame. And we're going to stand not directly athwartships, but 90 degrees to the planking, and sight that frame and see if it doesn't line up with that string. Now you can see that it doesn't line up perfectly, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the head of it forward a little bit. Now all of a sudden it looks like it parallels the string just perfectly, and that's where we want it. So I'm going to tighten up the clamp a little bit right there, and I'm going to take a drill and drill a hole through the planking into the framing and put one screw through the planking into the framing to keep it right there where it belongs. So I'm on to the second frame here, and I'm just going to take the plumb bob and move it over to the second frame, just forward of that frame. Hook it in position. It's laying right alongside the frame. I'm going to stabilize it a little bit so it's not swinging all over the place, just like that. Now I'm 90 degrees to the planking like so, and I'm going to sight that frame to the string, and I think it needs a little bit of tapping there, maybe something like that. That looks just about right to me. So I can take a clamp again and just clamp it into position so it doesn't swing around when I drill it, like so. And I'm just going to tighten that right up by hand until I feel the head of that screw hit the bottom of the hole. Give it a little tiny bit more twist so I know it's tight, and I'm done right there. Now we're just plumbing and fastening that third frame in position just like we did the other two. And once that's complete, we've got 3 frames fastened into position exactly the way we want them. And what we have to do now is come along and put a second screw in the very bottom of the frame into the chine log here, just a little bit to the left side of the frame. I don't want the 2 screws to line up with each other, because the more they line up with each other, the more tendency they would have to split that frame. That's exactly what I'm trying to stay away from. I also haven't put that first screw very close to the bottom of the frame. I've got it kind of up here into the middle of the chine log. The other one's going to be an inch above it or so over here on the left-hand side of the frame. Those screws hold that chine log from twisting right up into the aperture of that frame. And the screws from the planking outside into the frame and hold the plank really nice and tightly up against the frame, because it had a little bit of a cupping to it, that plank. But now that that's been fastened, that's all been taken out, and it looks great. We have 21 more to go. We're going to go around the whole boat doing exactly the same thing. There's no difference up forward or anywhere else. We're just going to plumb those frames, get them hung, and now we can move on to some planking.